I put on a fresh outfit, suit, tie, and I start climbing the stairs inside the Vatican. And I get to the roof, panting and wheezing, and there's a Coca-Cola stand on the roof of the Vatican. And I remember noting it in my journal, like, what? How could they permit a Coca-Cola stand on the roof of the Vatican? Well, okay, it's a business. Like everything else on earth, it's a business. Follow the money. I mean, they got to make a buck to keep old people in uniforms and keep the people well fed and drinking good wine. So that was the end of that. I mean, that punctured the balloon. But I really don't want to go to the Vatican. I have no application to attend the Vatican for whatever reason. I don't know why the man would say that I'll be banned from the Vatican like I'm banned from Britain. Here's another headline. In Sweden, you hear this? What is Sweden anymore? Sweden's nothing. Sex change for children. Sweden has disappeared because they've given up their culture, their language, and their borders. Did you know that? And there is no right wing in Sweden. Their own government turned on their own conservatives who could have saved Sweden, the same way the German government has turned on the patriots and the nationalists in Germany who are not Nazis, who could save Germany from the onslaught of Syrians that Merkel, the Nazi, is bringing into our country. That's right. Why do I use the word Merkel, the Nazi? What is a Nazi? National Socialist. You tell me what Merkel is if not a Nazi. Who gives her the authority to destroy Germany's borders, language, and culture when the majority of Germans don't want it to happen? And I mean even liberal Germans don't want all those Muslim men brought into Germany. Why is she doing it? Because she is a Nazi, a National Socialist. I didn't say that she's going to put people into ovens, did I? But I did say something rather controversial, and I think the inversion is quite obvious to anyone who studies this and can think clearly. But I will tell you this. We know that Hitler was an all-around monster. Given. Okay, given. He imposed his Germanic Nazi views upon surrounding nations by invading them, right? So what do you call a so-called leader like Merkel, for that matter, Obama, who invades his own country with foreigners who do not speak the language, do not respect the borders, and do not respect the culture? Is that not an inversion of Hitlerism? Tell me. I said it. I believe it. I believe every word I said makes sense. Okay, fascist Nazi invades other country to impose their will on others. Tell me what you would call a leader who invades his own nation against the will of the people. Tell me what that is. Now let's go back to the other story I raised today, which is shocking. How is it that a guy like Bill Gates, who has all that money, calls for socialism? The same way that Mark Zuckerberg, for whom there is not enough money in the world, wants to break America's borders over his little stinking smelly knee. Why is that? Because greed is an illness. You know, when the Aztecs were overrun by Spanish conquistadors, they were overrun for one reason. They were overrun for gold. The Spanish, the Portuguese, in their heyday, were monsters. They did things to the natives in those countries that are beyond your imagination, and I've studied this in great detail. But what were the Spanish doing in South America and Central America, especially Central America? They were searching for gold. And after raping and pillaging and murdering their way through Central America and stealing all the gold they could from the Aztecs noted in their lore that the Europeans, meaning the Spanish, have a disease called gold fever. And they said it's a disease for which there is no cure. My friends of the savage nation, I would argue with you today that the billionaire class who are now flooding America with illegal aliens have a fever equal to that of the Spanish who conquered the Central Americans, namely the Aztecs. Did anyone buy my book over the weekend? Am I allowed to ask? Raise your hand if you went to the bookstore and bought Government Zero, because a lot of people are buying it and I don't know where. And here's what's going to happen. You know, we in radio have to promote our own books, especially me, because I'm banned on all shows, except, one or two shows. I'll be on Alex Jones tomorrow. He's one of the few. Laura Ingraham, one of the few. Newsmax, one of the few. But by and large, I'm banned in the media. You know that. I'm blacklisted officially. We know that that's true because the very, very fair-minded people at Fox News have banned me for a number of reasons. I'm not going to complain about it, whatever. You know, there are books that take off on their own volition after a while, and they start to sell like crazy. I don't know how that happens. How is it possible that a book that is good, and mine is really good, eventually reaches a critical mass where people talk about it with their friends and it starts to sell itself? That is what I want to see happen, because I don't want to talk about it anymore. I'll read some good pieces from it. If you bought it and you found a good sentence that you want to read on the air, go ahead, make my day. But really, I don't want to talk about this every day. It's not all negative. Here's a story. A teen prodigy who flies planes and works for NASA. He's 17 years old. You hear this? He has 2 college degrees. He's too young to vote. Well, attention, Obama. He's too young to vote. He's a pilot. He's too young to drive a car alone. He's 17 years old. He's from San Gabriel, California. Graduated from community college at age 11. 4 years later, he had a bachelor's in math from the UCLA, a real school. And now he's working for a master's in cybersecurity through Brandeis University. He helps NASA develop surveillance technology for airplanes and drones. Guy is some kid, right? Published his 2nd book. And let's see, he plans to have his pilot's license by year's end. He has a trove of trophies from martial arts tournaments. What a kid. He's like Superboy. Now, how did he get this way? His name is Moshe Kai Kavelin. Now, Moshe is a Jewish name. But I don't know. I mean, Moshe is definitely, it's not a Brazil. Okay, his mother's from Taiwan and his father's from Brazil. But Moshe is a Jewish name. I don't know where this came from. He says he's more ordinary than people think. But he credits his parents for pushing him, in plain English. You hear? They didn't send him out for Halloween to get candy corn. I guarantee they didn't get him a stupid costume for Halloween. He credits his parents for years of focused instruction, balanced by the freedom to pick his after-school activities. I don't know. Maybe he's just smart. But he's got all these martial arts statues in his house. Obviously, he speaks Chinese fluently. He's got all these signs in Chinese over him. But he was always smart. Come on. At 4 months, he pointed to a jet in the sky and said the Chinese word for airplane. Okay? That was his first word. You hear that? That was his first word. Let's see. Kavelin hit the limits of his homeschooling after studying trigonometry at age 7. You hear this? Trigonometry at age 7. And then his mother started driving him to community college. Can you believe this kid? That's amazing. 17 years old. So there's a hope. And you know, it's tied to a bigger story. And the biggest story is this. They say, liberal parents, beware of your millennials. They're very conservative. Did you know there's a trend in America of conservative children that are growing up in this country? They have turned on their parents' hippiedom. They have turned on their parents' drug, sex, and rock and roll attitudes. If this country can survive the corrupt political class, perhaps we will be saved by this generation that's growing up that loves America. And I don't know, it's like a tooth and nail thing. We have how many months left of the regime right now? Look at what he's doing. Goes on Saturday Night Live, Obama, and makes a mockery of himself and of the presidency. I'll be right back.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or Swiss America. All right, here's a little story that should make all of your multicultural people quite happy. A group of middle-aged whites in the U.S. is dying at a startling rate. So you got what you wanted. A large segment of white middle-aged Americans has suffered a startling rise in its death rate, reversing decades of progress. The mortality rate for white men, everyone cheer now, and white women between the ages of 45 and 54 with less than a college education increased by 0.5% per year between 1999 and 2013. Let's hear it for the multiculturalists who've targeted the white people. They say most likely because of problems with legal and illegal drugs, alcohol, and suicide, according to a study released in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Now, before 1999, death rates for that group were dropping at an average of 2% a year. So why is it suddenly rising? Well, they say drugs, alcohol, and suicide are clearly the proximate cause, said Angus Deaton, the 2015 Nobel laureate in economics who co-authored the paper with his wife. 500,000 people are dead who should not be dead, he added, about 40 times the Ebola stats. You're getting up there with HIV/AIDS. It's an interesting statistic. So why is it that middle-aged, lower, lesser-educated whites are committing suicide with drugs, alcohol, and straight-out killing themselves? You would think with the nanny state it would go down, the death rate. But no, it's gone up. As a matter of fact, rates for U.S. blacks and Hispanics have been declining, meaning death rates, for decades. Interesting. Well, uneducated whites seem to be targeted for, well, something that's not good. Isn't that interesting? Well, we can't go into that. We're not intelligent enough to discuss this amongst ourselves. We need NPR to analyze it for us with some Vivaldi music in the background to show you how smart they are. Meanwhile, the United Nations is planning a court for climate justice, while the Antarctic is gaining ice. And meanwhile, the top French meteorologist who questioned global warming has been fired. Sieg Heil, my friends. Meanwhile, in Germany, the Nazi parties are rising because of her. The neo-Nazis are rising, which is the nightmare scenario. By the way, this is exactly how Hitler came to power. A weak government, and there was a reaction to the weak government. And now we're seeing a reaction to the crazy weak government. Neo-Nazis terrorize asylum seekers with firebombs and chilling attack in Germantown. Now, why are the mobs of neo-Nazis going on an orgy of violence in Germany against asylum seekers? Well, for one, they're Nazis. But two, it's because their government is attacking their own nation. It's reminiscent of the dark days of the early days of the Third Reich. And the fact of the matter is, it's Angela Merkel's open door policy to invaders that is causing this reaction amongst the neo-Nazis. They want their country. They do not want their country taken away from them. Am I justifying what they're doing? Absolutely not. I'm opposed to violence, but to me, invading your own nation is a form of violence. Merkel is committing violence upon her borders, language, and culture in the same manner that Obama, the sneak thief, is causing violence on America's national identity.